Vince Bertram is the CEO of Project Lead the Way, and he has put out a brand new book here, One Nation Under Taught, in which he outlines how we solve America's science, technology, engineering, and math crisis, known most of the time as STEM. And he joins us here this morning on the Gary Sutton Show. Dr. Bertram, an honor to have you with us, sir. Good morning.
Well, thank you. I'm pleased to be with you.
I've been reading through your book a little bit, and it's very interesting. And having been a teacher for about 25 years, I have a great concern about this. I'm sure every American does, no matter what position they come from. What led you to write the book here in the first place? What took you out of the gate?
Well, thank you. When I look at one is our economy and education and the future of our nation, I'm just concerned. In 2013, the National Assessment for Educational Progress, only 34% of our fourth graders were proficient in math. In eighth grade, only 27% were proficient. And our seniors, only 26% of our nation's 12th graders were scoring at or above proficiency in math. 35% were failing. We only had 3% advanced and 1% advanced in science. So in other words, 40% of Americans about to enter the workforce, military, college, are achieving voting age, are unable to perform basic mathematics. And then I look at the job market, the opportunities available to our students. Today, STEM jobs are growing at twice the pace of non-STEM jobs. It's really the foundation of our economy. And yet we have 4.7 million jobs unfilled today, job vacancies, and nearly 9 million people unemployed. So this skills gap that exists, I think, can be solved by a focus on science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and K-12 education.
One of the things that bothers me a lot, I'm not going to get political on this, but this will come dangerously close to politics. And it's this. We hear an awful lot of talk in our country about upping the minimum wage. And yet I hear very little talk about really getting the maximum wage advanced. And it seems to me that one of the things you're talking about here is how to get to more of a maximum wage. In other words, should the desire of our country, our educators, our administrators, our politicians, our presidents, our senators and congressmen, be to get the very minimum thing and preach that somehow is desirable? Or should it be to go more in the direction of where you're going and say, hey, we need to improve our science and technology. We need to improve our engineering and our math. And there are a lot of jobs out there. I know right in our area alone, which is a high manufacturing area, there are tons of jobs out there for people, and yet there are many people who won't even apply for them because they're not qualified.
Yeah, and you've raised a very important issue. When I look at educational attainment, we see a direct correlation in median earnings across all education levels. So from less than a high school diploma to a doctoral degree, wages just continue to go up in correlation and relative to the degree. And the inverse is true with unemployment. The unemployment is the highest in double digits for those with less than a high school diploma and only 2.2% for those with advanced degrees. So, but then we look in STEM itself where we find a 25% premium for STEM-related jobs. There are high demand, high wage jobs available to America's students, provided that they have the skills to actually perform in those jobs.
If there are kids listed out there or parents of kids listed out there, one of the projections you make in your book for the next decade is that we're going to need approximately 1 million more professionals in STEM-related fields. And again, for people who are listening and want to know what STEM is, that's science, technology, engineering, math. But there are more than 1 million more professionals that are going to be needed that our educational system is actually producing right now. Is that correct?
That is correct. And those are projections from that have been verified by the United States government and many other areas, but also we are on the ground as well, working with companies all over the country, and employer after employer continues to tell us that they have great jobs available. They could even grow faster with a more robust workforce, and we just don't have the people ready to fill those jobs. And so when we look at America's students today, one of the things that we find is so many of our students are just uninspired when it comes to math and science. We find from years of research that students make decisions whether they're good in math and science as early as second grade. We turn students off, and as a result, they are less inclined to go into a STEM-related discipline.
And you've actually laid out that you think for us to be able to keep, our top level in terms of science and technology, that we need to graduate about 34% more students each year with STEM-type degrees.
Absolutely, and it's doable. I'll give you an example. High school freshmen, approximately 1 million, just over 25% of America's freshmen in high school indicated interest in STEM-related fields. By the time they graduate, we lose 57% of them. So 570,000 students between grades 9 and 12 will turn off to STEM-related fields. And then they go into higher education, and only about 40% of those that go into a STEM-related field or have interest in it actually graduate with the STEM degree. The students are there. We don't have a people shortage. We just have people who are uninspired or, in some cases, just lack the fundamental skills to continue to advance in math and science.
Dr. Bertram, we have a caller right now who's interested in what we're talking about this morning. John, you're on the Gary Sutton Show with Dr. Vince Bertram, who is the author of One Nation Under Talk. Go ahead, John. Your turn to make the call.
Well, you've talked to me before, Gary, on this whole sort of issue. I'm glad you wrote a book. I'm glad you're concerned, but according to Computer Industrial Magazine, 71% of the STEM jobs will be in the area of computing. Those jobs will not be in America because Americans want to be paid. I know people in the business. I know people that get scripting done, and it's done in India because in India they earn $5 to $10 a day, and they will do that work. You could have everyone today be brilliant in STEM, and the jobs, some will be there, 4 million jobs, okay, maybe not. That's not a whole lot of jobs in the United States. I know people...
Well, John, let me see if I can get a reaction here from Dr. Bertram, what you had to say, because it's an important point. Dr. Bertram?
Well, no question, computing goes in a lot of areas, from coding to things like cybersecurity and many other areas that are domestic type of jobs. We are not outsourcing cybersecurity. It's one of the greatest threats to America today. We need domestic students that are working on these type of issues for us. And the same thing with defense contractors who are relegated to hiring domestic engineers and people in computer science. But here's the problem. In 1985, we graduated about 980,000 students with bachelor degrees in the United States. In 2012, 1.8 million. But in computer and information sciences, we graduated 42,000 in 1985 and only 47,000 in 2012. We just don't have enough students that are interested in this. So there's tremendous opportunity here. No question, we still deal with a global marketplace. There are still outsourcing of jobs, but there are also things that are happening here in America where there's great opportunities for American students.
As I'm reading through your book, one of the things that I think you do is you really challenge our whole way of thinking about education, and you encourage educators and policymakers at all levels to work together to make our schools places that kind of promote the kind of curiosity and love of learning that you're talking about, and maybe promote a whole different way of thinking. You actually lay out a blueprint in your book. So, again, looking at it from a positive standpoint, what is the blueprint for moving forward now and helping to make this a much more feasible field for people to go into, a much more desirable field for people to go into?
I think there are two major areas. One is we have often looked at education in K-12 in particular as students learning math to take a test or for the next grade level. And we have to help students understand that math and science are skills to solve problems, and problems they're going to confront for a lifetime. So if we can engage them in activity, problem, project-based learning early on, inspire them, and help them understand the relevancy of math and science, we think we can keep them on track and focused and interested in these subjects. The other major issue is that too often we have done a lot of external type of policy work, driving type of things that we believe will affect schools. But reality, it's not getting to the classroom. So what we are proposing is a major focus on teaching and learning. What actually happens in classrooms? How do we train teachers to teach in a project-based environment? And how do we inspire students in the classroom? So while policy obviously is very important, high standards are important, we have to really focus on teaching and learning.
You know, you've been a teacher, a principal, you've been a superintendent in an urban district. We've talked a lot about those in this country a lot this year. And you're the president and CEO of Project Lead the Way. You're trying to find ways to get people more involved in this whole STEM kind of thing. Yet at the same time, you said project-based education. For those of us who have been in education like yourself and myself, I think we get caught up in our own jargon sometimes. For people that are sitting out there, the layperson that's sitting out there saying, what's project-based education? Can you give them an example of what you're looking at there that really should be used to teach kids at a very early age when they get into school how to kind of get going?
Yeah, it's a great question. Project Lead the Way. We're the nation's leading provider of STEM curriculum in the United States for grades K through 12. We also have many community colleges that teach our program, and it's all activity, problem, project-based. We also train thousands of teachers across the country on how to teach in that kind of classroom and engage universities and corporate partners across America as well. But when we really focus on project-based learning, what we're saying is that rather than teaching students how to solve a formula, we have them apply those formulas. So as they're learning those things, they're actually applying it to real-world examples. So I'll give you an example of what happens at early elementary schools. Rather than teaching certain principles or mathematics formulas, we actually have students doing animal rescues by using levers and pulleys, and then applying the math and science to that project. It's exciting for students, but they're learning math and science along the way. It's that type of learning that we believe inspires students. So we bring projects in and that are real world, but also highly relevant to students and to their local, state, or national examples.
I know, and you gave a great example there because the relevancy factor. Having been a teacher for 25 years, and I have my master's in educational administration as well, and you look at these things and you say, okay, and the kids will say, well, why do we have to learn that? Well, because you have to. Okay, you might have to use that someday. Or why do we have to learn the Constitution? Or why do we have to learn these kind of things? I was always a history teacher. I had to make those explanations. But what you're doing here is really starting to meld together the relevancy with why you have to learn this stuff. And I think that's a really good thing, and especially at an early age, and getting these kids started out on the right path. That certainly does change the blueprint there of how we're educating kids in our society.
Yeah, no question. Howard Gardner from Harvard says that the greatest deficit for American students is their inability to apply learning in a context in which it wasn't learned. We often teach these subjects in isolation. Math taught down one hallway, science down another. But what we do at our program is find a way to integrate all disciplines. So students understand the historical context. They understand how music is based in math and science in a significant way. And that relevancy is what inspires students' learning.
Science, technology, engineering, and math. How do we get our kids in a better place right now? We're talking with Dr. Vince Bertram this morning. He's written a book on it called One Nation Undertaught. You said something in your book that really jumped out at me, and it said commencement addresses are rife with bad advice telling students to follow their dreams. For us to live in a world where this advice were applicable or led to success, there would need to be a lot more jobs for professional athletes and Broadway performers, and I would dare say Hollywood actors. In reality, the jobs are and will be in STEM fields: science, technology, engineering, and math. And one of the things you say in there, and I think it's so true, we need to be honest with kids and tell them that life will be easier, much easier, if they develop the appropriate skills aligned with the greatest opportunities. And it seems to me we're talking in a dream world right now compared to the world of reality that you're talking about.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a rational advice to say to students, just follow your dreams and you're going to live a great life.
Right.
It's just not going to happen for very many students. Now, what we don't do is discourage them from pursuing their athletic interest
Absolutely.
or their music interest. But at the same time, they have to develop skills that are in demand, that they have a great opportunity for a great career. But
I'll tell you, as a coach, the kids that you send out, the percentages aren't for you getting there on a scholarship necessarily, so you better have your skills lined up behind that. And plus the fact that when you get there, you're only going to be playing for 4 years in most cases, so what are you going to do when you get out of that situation? We're going to come back and talk more with Dr. Vince Bertram here on the Gary Sutton Show. What do we do to help our kids in science, technology, engineering, and math, and to make it more relevant to them right now so that they're able to cope with the future better? All out ahead here on the Gary Sutton Show with Dr. Vince Bertram. He'll be right back on WSBA. Dr. Vince Bertram with us this morning. What can be more important, a product to put out than our nation's students, and what can be more important than the science, technology, engineering, and math skills that seem to be coming up more and more in a high-tech world? Dr. Bertram with us here this morning on the Gary Sutton Show. And he's written this book, One Nation Under Taught. And one of the things that he said that U.S. employers are having an increasingly tough time filling STEM jobs right now. I'll go back to that again because that's a very important thing. But by the same token, he says if we don't change course, we're going to set our students and our country on the path to a lifetime of poverty. Big words there. Dr. Bertram, we have another caller on the line with us, Joel Sears, who is a member of the York Suburban School Board with a question for you this morning. Go ahead, Joel. How you doing?
Good morning, Dr. Bertram. I'm going to make an observation here and ask you for a response on that. I think one of the contributing factors is teacher qualifications. Over the last, say, 30 to 40 years, it seems to me that the emphasis in public education in particular has shifted primarily from content to pedagogy. And I think that makes a huge difference. That doesn't necessarily attract the most mathematically gifted into the field of math teaching and science teaching. And I think that contributes to the problem.
Thanks, Joel. Appreciate the thought. Dr. Bertram?
Well, I want to make sure I understand the question. But I have written extensively in One Nation Under Taught about the teacher issue in American education, and primarily how do we attract and retain America's best and brightest, from compensation to overall licensure type of issues as well. Making sure that we can attract people who may be second career type of people who want to come into our nation's schools, and that's really important. But one of the things that we have not done, in fact, is really focused on the pedagogy and how do we teach and what kind of environment do we create for students that's engaging and exciting. Just from a content perspective only, I don't believe that's enough. We have to take content and deliver it in a way that is exciting for students, that engages them and inspires their curiosity. And that's something that we are missing in schools. Too often when students enter school with this natural curiosity, we teach them how to do school. We teach them how to comply. And as a result, we stifle some of the creativity that could lead students into a positive direction.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back to my methods class, which I had back in, I think, 1861 or something. But no, it seems like that anymore. But I graduated in 1973. And but one of the things I was thinking about my methods class, what do I remember from that? I don't remember anything from that. What I do remember is getting out there and kind of feel like they're saying, well, you're on your own now, and trying to figure out ways to stimulate kids and to get them thinking. And I can honestly tell you there were days where I'm pretty sure I didn't do that, and especially in history where everybody says, oh, yawn. But there are other things that I would do a lot of times that I thought were pretty good. And some of the days, I always thought maybe just kind of getting them to be just a little bit uncomfortable, but in an anticipatory way, where you're uncomfortable, but you can't wait to see what's coming next. And I think that's kind of the thing you're talking about, is we need to make sure that we don't let kids get comfortable with the same old status quo. And that's kind of where we've gotten to over the last bunch of years.
Yeah, I think that's the line, going back to Joel's insightful question. And to your point, you look at most schools of education, many of these subjects are taught in isolation as well. We teach, they go get their math classes in the math department, and their teacher education courses are taught in the teacher's college or the education department. We have to find a way to integrate these courses so that we, as the teachers, have a better understanding how to deliver content, not just ask students to regurgitate something or deliver it in direct instruction in a lecture style, but rather in a more engaging project activity-based environment.
What other things do you include in your blueprint right now that, as you look forward, are musts? They've got to be done, or else we are going to be continuing on that failing path that we're on right now.
Yeah, so in addition to some of the things we've already talked about in the integrated approach and helping students understand how STEM connects to everything. And we're not just talking about STEM careers, we're also talking about STEM skills, skills that are in high demand. So problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration, communication skills that all employers are looking for regardless of their sector. The other thing that we have to do is start early. This isn't something that we turn students on to in high school. For instance, if the first time students get a computing class or computer science class, going back to John's earlier question, it is the idea that we're going to get more students engaged in that, I think, is a ridiculous thought. Unless students have this at a very early age. And the other is that we cannot continue to teach these subjects in isolation. And And that's
Right.
what we are advocating for in the book as well.
The fact is, in a nation, in a world where you have high tech coming in there all the time, science, technology, engineering, and math are going to be in just about everything that we do. The name of the book is One Nation Under Taught. Dr. Bertram, where can people find that?
It's at BarnesandNoble.com, Amazon.com, and you could also find Project Lead the Way at pltw.org.
I think it's a great book. I'm enjoying reading it, and I think for a lot of people out there with kids or just people that want to see our nation move forward with the next generation, it's a great read. Dr. Bertram, always a pleasure having you aboard. I hope we can do it again sometime.
Likewise, thank you so much.
Take care and have a great day. Dr. Vince Bertram with us here on the Gary Sutton Show. Again, the name of the book, One Nation Under Taught. He outlines how America can solve its science, technology, engineering, and math problems, or at least a blueprint to get in the right direction.